Okay, so I want to show a couple of fly patterns that I really like. And when most people think about Euro nymphs, they think, you know, bright, flashy dubbing collars, brightly colored hot spots, thread wraps, stuff like that. And those are fine. They really trigger responses from fish sometimes. You know, they can really get a fish to bite and take your fly. It makes your fly stand out. But there are also times when you need the complete opposite, believe it or not. There are times when brightly colored hot spots on a Euro jig can actually have the opposite effect as what you want it to and can turn a fish off. And, you know, it can refuse your fly just because of that. You know, if the water's super low and clear, if they've been fished really hard and pressured and they're really selective, then, you know, sometimes it's better to go with more natural drab colors. So, and it's not just wild fish. This can go for stocked fish also. Large holdovers who have been in the stream for a really long time. They've had everything under the sun thrown at them. You know, brightly colored egg patterns, mops, you know, just whatever. And I've been in situations before where I think, oh, you know, these are stocked fish. I can throw anything to them and they're going to eat my fly with no regards to their, you know, health or safety whatsoever. But then I throw my fly in and I can see the fish like turn away from my fly and go hide under a rock because they know something's up, you know. So in situations like that, these are just a couple of the flies that I like to turn to. So I'm going to show y'all how to tie these flies. And again, these are just really simple, really quick ties, just natural drab colors, no bright flash, no hot spots, no colored thread wraps or anything like that. So for this first one, this is a size 14 jig hook. It's got a 3mm copper tungsten bead, and this is going to be just the regular Waltz Worm. I mean, there's variations of it called the sexy waltz, you know, it's got flash and color and stuff like that, but this is just the regular Waltz. And I'm going to show you a really good way to tie this fly. So we're going to take our thread, start right behind the bead. I'm going to wrap all the way back to the bend of the hook, and I like to go down the bend just a little bit. Kind of gives a little curve shape. Snip our tag end off. Now, some people like to use like wire ribbing on their Waltz worms. To me, if I'm wanting a fly with no flash or anything, that's just the complete opposite of what I want, you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double my thread over and almost make like a dubbing loop, like you would if you was going to make a dubbing loop, and then just lay it back here out of the way. And we're gonna use that for a ribbing. I'll show you that in a second. So now we're gonna dub the body, and for the body we're just using regular, you know, dark hare's ear dubbing. And you want to go super thin, like, you know, you can see through this dubbing. This is a thin piece of dubbing. You do not want to go too thick. See, it's just kind of waving around. Gonna twist this onto our thread. And like I said, you want to go as thin as possible. You do not want the body of this fly to build up and bulk up too much. You want to go with the term thin to win, thin to win. So we're going to start, we're going to make a few wraps at the tail and just start working our way forward. And as the body of this fly gets closer to the bead, I'm going to start adding more dubbing to it. And we're going to thicken it up. We're going to make like a gradual taper up towards the bead. You don't want to add too much up towards the bead. You still want to try to stay thin, but just a nice slight gradual taper. So we're going to add some more dubbing. work our way up here. Make sure our bead's seated right on our hook shank. Wrap that dubbing right up against that bead. Now see, we're thin in the back, and it gets just a little bit thicker towards the bead. That's what we want. And now, to rib this fly with this thread loop, I actually learned this from another YouTuber. I can't remember his name, but he's got some really good fishing videos. I like to watch him. And I watched him do this, and I thought, man, that's a super easy way to rib a waltz worm with a dubbing loop. So if you've got a dubbing spinner, you can spin it with your fingers if you don't have one of these, but it's a lot easier if you've got a dubbing spinner. Hook it to your thread loop, give it a few spins, and all that's going to do is that's just going to double up this thread and make it super durable. And we're going to counter wrap against the dubbing, so we're going to go the complete opposite direction that we wrap the dubbing on. And what that does is it just adds durability to the fly. And you can pull this thread pretty tight against the body, and it just creates some segmentation in the body. Kind of gives it a natural segmented look. Alright, so we're up at the bead. I'm going to wrap this in. Go ahead and cut our thread loop off. A couple good firm wraps behind the bead. We're going to whip finish. Not too many whip finish wraps, just 2 or 3 and be done. You know, a lot of people like to add 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 whip finish wraps, and all it does is just add unnecessary bulk on the fly. We're going to cut our thread. And now, just for some extra durability, what I like to do is, you know, most people use like head cement or something. I like to take just a little bit of super glue, just one little drop right there behind the bead, let it soak down into those thread wraps, and that fly is bomb proof now with that Loctite super glue. And you got all these little dubbing fibers sticking out here. You know, those are fine. They're not going to hurt anything, but I'm picky about my flies. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm picky about them. So I come in here and I give it a little haircut, trim those off. And that's it. I mean, just super simple. Just a dubbed body with a copper bead. Or you can go silver, you know, black, whatever kind of bead you want. I like copper. But that's it, just a regular waltz worm, and it doesn't look like there's much to this fly, and that is the whole point. When you start getting into fish that is just super picky and super selective, they don't want anything bright and flashy thrown at them, go to this right here. Natural, drab colored. Super simple. Alright, so for the second fly that I like to use in those situations like that, we're going to tie just a regular pheasant tail jig. Again, no bright flash, no colored hot spots. You know, I've downsized my hook to a size 18. I'm still using the same 3mm copper bead. I don't mind to oversize my beads like that on my small flies. You just want to make sure that you pair it up with a nice hook that will allow you to oversize your bead, but still give you a good gap right here in between your bead and your hook point. You don't want that bead getting in the way of your hook set. So again, this is a size 18 with a 3mm copper bead. And it's just going to be just a regular little pheasant tail nymph. We're going to start our thread right behind the hook, or right behind the bead, I mean. Wrap down the hook shank again. We're going to stop just right before it starts curving down. Now this fly is going to have some tail fibers, and for the tail fibers on my Euro jigs, I like Coq de Leon. This is medium speckled. It just gives the tail just a really nice thin profile, but when the light hits it, it really shines. You know, it's just enough to tell that that fly has a nice little tail on it. So I'm going to take a feather here. I'm going to pull off, not many, just 3 or 4 little fibers. And I'm really bad about making the tails of my flies way too long. So I'm going to take my time here and make sure I do this right. You want to measure a tail out just about the same length as the hook shank. So you're going to take those, and I'm going to lay them on the hook shank on my side. And then that way, whenever I wrap over them, well then the thread is just going to kind of pull the fibers up on top of the hook. And they're just going to kind of lay out just nice and flat like that. There we go. It's pretty good. Snip off the excess. And like, I know you see my bead moving around here, and a lot of people want to, as soon as they put their bead on the hook, they want to make a ton of thread wraps behind the bead to try to hold it in place, or add a bunch of lead wire behind the bead. And you know, that works to hold your bead in place, but it also builds up just a lot of unnecessary bulk to the body of your fly. And the whole point of these flies, again, is to just keep them small, thin profile, you know, not a lot of bulk or flash to them, just natural looking flies. So, you know, we'll finish the fly and hold the bead in place at the end of the fly. We don't want to start off with too much bulk. I'm going to wrap back up to the bead, and the ribbing on this fly is just going to be some ultra small copper wire. Gonna wrap that all the way down to where the tail started. Actually, you kind of want to stop just a little bit shy of where the tail fibers start, because when you start to wrap that wire, if you wrap it all the way down to where the tail is tied in, then whenever you go to wrap your wire, it can actually catch these tail fibers and kind of move them out of place. You want to kind of keep those going straight back behind the fly. You don't want to bend them to the side. It's not a natural look whenever that happens. So for the body, just 2 pheasant tail fibers. That's it. You know, a lot of people, again, want to grab like 3 or 4 of these fibers, and if you're tying a bigger fly, that's fine. But for a fly that's as small as like a size 18, that is just way too much bulk, especially whenever you go to finish the fly behind the bead. So we're going to tie those in by the tips. I'm going to take them, and I'm just going to wrap back up the body. Sorry if I'm blocking the camera with my fingers. Yes, my vise has a rotary function. No, I'm not using it right now just because, I don't know, I actually feel like I get more precise wraps whenever I do it myself than I do with the rotary function. So I'll use the rotary function, you know, like on a large fly sometimes, but for small ones like this, I just prefer to do it myself. So we're going to wrap those 2 fibers all the way up to the bead. We're going to capture them with our thread. Just make a good couple of firm wraps behind them and in front of them to hold them in place. Snip off the excess. And you're going to take your copper wire And again, just like on the Waltz Worm, you want to counter wrap your ribbing. So we wrap the pheasant tail fibers this way around the fly. We want to wrap the ribbing the opposite direction. So we're going to go underneath, 2, 3 wraps right up the body. We're going to capture that with our thread. Give it some good firm wraps. Hold it in place. I don't know if y'all can hear my little boy crying or not. He's not happy right now. He's okay. Mama's got him. So then to get this wire off, I don't like to snip my wire. It dulls your scissors. So I like to get my thread, just kind of put my thumb on it and give it a nice little firm tug and hold it in place. Then you can take this wire and just kind of helicopter it off and break it off. Now again, just like the Waltz Worm, you don't want to do like a ton of whip finish wraps. Just 2 or 3 and done. 2, 3, right behind the bead. Snip your thread. Again, just 1 small drop of super glue right behind the bead. The glue's not wanting to come out. There we go. Let that soak down into those thread wraps. That'll hold that in place really good. And I know, like, up against the camera, this fly looks bigger than what it is, but this fly is actually just super small. I mean, there it is on my finger. Whoop, if I don't drop it again. It is just a really tiny fly, size 18. And the good thing about doing an oversized bead on a smaller fly like this is if I'm in fast pocket water and I just want to fish a single nymph that's small and I can just kind of pick those pockets of water apart with, but I still want it to have plenty of weight to it to get down to depth in that fast water, this fly right here is perfect for that. So there you have it. Just a regular Waltz Worm, little size 18 pheasant tail, no bright colors, no hot spots, no, you know, brightly colored dubbing collars or thread wraps or anything like that. You find yourself in a situation where you feel like you need to be getting more strikes than what you should be. You know the fish are there. You know you're making really good drifts. You know your flies are getting to depth, and you're just not getting the strikes that you feel like you need to be getting. Take off the bright colors. Go to stuff like this. Downsizing flies. Go to natural drab colors and make really good drifts, get down to depth, and I promise you, you'll see an increase in your strikes. Thanks.